Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today, we're going to be talking about using vitamin D in the winter season. It's winter now to help enhance your immune system. I'll be kind of talking about, vitamin D doses, kind of what the best things out of the gates are, and then kind of what is vitamin D actually doing? How is it helping your immune system? Before we dive in, make sure you smash that like button. Really helps that YouTube algorithm. Put your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Things that you've done to help improve your immune function. Really excited to dive in on that. All right, so let's go. So immune system-wise, we want to be resistant. We want to have really good resistance to infectious debris, bacteria, and viruses in the world coming into our body, right? So things that help make our body more impenetrable to viruses and bacteria coming in are healthy cell membranes. Right, healthy cell membranes, it's harder for viruses and bacteria to kind of come in there and bind with receptor sites. Healthy levels of vitamin A really help making that a harder thing for bacteria and viruses to overcome. That's very important. Having good natural killer cell function, good helper cell function, very important. Your natural killer cells, your Th1 immune cells, they signal your antibodies to go make antibodies. So if you have good, healthy, natural killer cells, you come out, you attack whatever that virus or bacteria particle is, you signal back to the Th2 cells, to the humoral immune system response, which makes antibodies, IgG, IgM, IgA, etc., to come in there and help out. So better, good, healthy receptor sites, harder for viruses and bacteria to kind of gain in. Vitamin A is very helpful in that. Good natural killer cell response. That's like the Navy SEALs. That's the Delta team. That's the Army Rangers, right? Those are the Green Berets. Those are the people getting in there on the front lines fast. And that really helps, number one, prevent infections from gaining a foothold, and two, they can signal back to the humoral immune response to make more antibodies. So vitamin D plays a big role because you have this natural balance between Th1, the natural killers, the Navy SEALs, right? And those are the ones that are coming in there and killing things on the front line. And we also have good communication back to make antibodies, which are the infantry behind us coming in. So vitamin D is helpful. Now, out of the gates, I typically recommend, if you're not going to do any testing, at least 1,000 IUs per 25 pounds of body weight. That's a good rule of thumb. You can kind of come out of the gates and do that for a month or two and then test. And you want to test your 25-hydroxy D3 levels. That's a pretty good way to kind of get a good assessment on that. You can do the D3, the 25-hydroxy D3 and D2 together and look at those at the same time. That's fine, but definitely D3. At least 50 is a pretty good range. 50 to 70 is good if you know you are compromised immune system-wise, older, elderly, poor diet. I probably would go 70 to 100 autoimmune conditions, 70 to 100 if you are more immune compromised. But 50 to 70 is a pretty good level out of the gates with vitamin D. Now, you can get some vitamin D in some cod liver oil, in some like mushrooms and healthy animal products, but it's not going to move the needle a ton. So supplement-wise, you can try to do vitamin D3, and usually in some kind of a fat-soluble liquid or capsule is a really good rule of thumb, either MCT oil, olive oil. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, right? A, D, E, and K are your fat-soluble vitamins. So vitamin D you want to have it with some kind of fat, which is helpful. It's good to take vitamin D3 with K2 if you have the option. Now, I do a lot of butter throughout the day and ghee and fermented vegetables, so I get a lot of K1 and K2 already in my diet, so I personally don't do K2 with it. But if you have a family member that you know their diet isn't the best, probably want to slip some K2 in with that D3. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. So 1,000 IUs per 25 pounds of body weight, good out of the gates. If you have darker skin, right? Darker skin, so you could be just someone who's more tan to full-on African American, the melanin in your skin is natural sunblock. It's the natural UV protectant. So you're going to make vitamin D less efficiently. And so you need more vitamin D. You need more vitamin D. And if you're in a climate, let's say greater than 36 on the line of latitude there, right? Boston's 42, Texas I want to say is like 32 to 34, Miami's 30, 32. So if you're like right in the middle or up, you're probably going to have problems and you're going to need to be on vitamin D maybe even all year round. Unless you're like someone that's working outside throughout the summer and spring, you're going to need vitamin D. And so lighter skinned, not going to be as bad unless you're covered up more in the spring and summer. Darker skin, you got to hit the vitamin D up because you have natural sunblock, aka melanin, that's protecting your skin from UV damage. So just got to work on that. Good diet, K2 may be optional. If you want to supplement K2, can't hurt. And if your diet's questionable, definitely add the K2 in there. And it can't hurt to add in some vitamin A. I always like the whole family of fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, and K are going to be the big ones that work really good together. Of course, vitamin E is also one too, but A, D, and K are excellent. And cod liver oil is a great source of vitamin A. And again, like I mentioned earlier, vitamin A really helps make your receptor sites more tenable, more resistant to invaders and less likely for things to kind of gain into the receptor site and get inside the cell, right? It's got to pass the cell membrane for it to be able to replicate and create damage and stress in the body. So stronger, healthier cell membranes, right? It's like a drawbridge. It's like a moat and a drawbridge. Healthy cell membranes provide that little bit of extra protection. So vitamin D is good out of the gates. There's also some ways you can use vitamin D acutely. So I tell patients, if you know your vitamin D isn't great, but you're starting to get sick, what do? There's some protocols where you can do vitamin D 100,000 IUs for 2 to 3 days in a row, just to kind of get your levels up really fast and high. That helps support your immune system, but you got to pull back on that, within the week or so to bring it back to a more reasonable level. Now, I mentioned 1,000 IUs per 1,000 IUs per 25 pounds of body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, 8,000. And if you know you're low out of the gates, right? If you know I got to test my vitamin D's at 20 or 18, you probably want to double that for a month and then bring it back to that for the next month. And then typically if it starts to get springtime, you can usually half it again, maybe down to 3,000 to 5,000 IUs in vitamin for the springtime. And if you're in doubt, you can get a test quarterly just to make sure you're on track. I always recommend a good test during, or at least before the winter. I typically sit between 40 and 50, and then I'll just bump it up to 50 to 70 in between the wintertime, and that usually helps a ton. And then see, outside of that, we talked about the acute care protocol for vitamin D. That's important. Yeah, vitamin D, it upregulates this natural antibiotic. It's called cathelicidin. It's a antimicrobial enzyme, and it actually goes after bacteria. So you can support healthy bacteria reduction through vitamin D as well. And vitamin D supports your T regulatory cells. And your T regulatory cells, they kind of have the ability to balance out the seesaw, so to speak, right? It's like you got two kids on a seesaw, right? Big kid, little kid, and then there's an imbalance in the seesaw. Well, the T regulatory cells are like the parent coming over and helping the kid that's lighter or bigger to kind of even out the seesaw. That's what vitamin D is. It's like a parent that's kind of balancing out that seesaw. So very helpful. So out of the gates, vitamin D, sun is going to be your first ideal goal, right? Minimal erythemal dose, MED, don't burn. Again, if you're lighter skin, 15 to 20 minutes may be enough. If you're darker skin, it may take 6 to 8 hours, right? So you got to know where you're at, know where your latitude's at. There's a good app for your phone. It is called D-Dimer or D... Oh man, I'll put it in the notes, but it's an app that you put in your latitude, you put in your skin color, your skin pigment and all that, and then it'll tell you kind of where you're at in the year, how much time in the sun you need to get your minimal erythemal dose of vitamin D. I'll put the link to that app down below, but I think it's D-Dimer or D something. So take a look at that. It's in the App Store. Very helpful if you want to try to get it more naturally from the sun. That's ideal. If not, we supplement. And that's a really great way to fill in the gaps because it's hard to get enough vitamin D therapeutically. All right, let me dive into some questions. So if you guys want to dive in deeper or any more help, click down below. You can reach out to myself and my staff for more help and support. Also, I'll put a link to my vitamin D, which is a liquid vitamin D and MCT oil. Pretty clean, simple, high dose, 2,000 IUs per drop. Some are more concentrated, some are less. Also, you can even do your vitamin D like even once a week. It's fat soluble, so it can build up. So I personally just do my vitamin D like once a week. I do 50,000 IUs once a week. That averages about the 7,000 IUs per day because I don't have to think about it. I don't have to be on it every single day. So I do it once a week, and then I'm usually pretty good. Let me go into some questions here for y'all. If you want to reach out below, you have the links below to reach out to myself. Click to subscribe. Comments below. Really appreciate it, y'all. Hey there. Excellent. Let me hit some good questions. Okay. Yeah, not sure if I'm going through your external mic. So on YouTube, I'm going through this mic right here on YouTube. On Facebook, I have this little mic I go through. So this is my Facebook mic. Check, check, check. Okay. What's good to take for your lymph nodes? So for lymph, I like ginger, Ginger's excellent. You can do burdock tea as well. There's also a tea called Essiac tea, which has burdock. It has like it has some type of rhubarb in there. A couple other things. Very, very good. Hey Desiree, hope you're doing good. Husband's 180 pounds, taking 14,000 vitamin D during the winter. Is that okay? I would get tested. 14,000 IUs may be good for a month, and then you probably want to pull back the second month to 7. So you may want to get tested with that. So it does help with seasonal affective disorder. I would probably do it for a month or so and then pull back in half the second month. And then you can always get retested sometime between month 1 and month 2 to see where he's at. Hope that helps. Are we supposed to take the sun at noon when the UVB is the highest? So it depends, right? In the summer, if you're more fair-skinned, you may want to go between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. or between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. if you have lighter skin to prevent burning. It just gives you, let's say, a little bit more buffer room so you don't get burned. Okay. Now the sun's going to be the strongest UV-wise based on the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. rule. That's where the angle of the sun and the earth is the most direct. Okay. The sun's the most overhead. The angle's not acute or etc. when it's earlier or later in the day, which makes the sun less strong. So lighter skin, you can always hit it in the morning. That way, instead of having a 20-minute window, you have a 40-minute window on the sun. So it gives you more buffer room to avoid burning. If you're darker skin, you definitely want to be hitting that midday so you can get a stronger dose of the ultraviolet B there. Very helpful. Okay, cool. Good questions. Good questions. All right, let me go jump over to YouTube here. Oh, glad to hear you're doing great. Keep it up, Desiree. Awesome. Okay, cool. Let me just go over to YouTube now. All right. What are your thoughts on nystatin and treatment for SIFO? So SIFO is small intestinal fungal overgrowth. I typically would use Saccharomyces and a bunch of other herbs. Saccharomyces is actually shown to be more effective than diflucan. But again, we have our 6R protocol: remove the bad foods, replace the enzymes, repair the gut lining and hormones, remove the infections, reinoculate, repopulate good bacteria, prebiotics, retest, and that's our flow on that. Vitamin D at 133 about 2 months ago, and since then stopped taking it, didn't realize it was high. How long does it take to decrease it to normal levels? So I just want to make sure. I think it's in Canada and Europe, they have a different level. I think the conversion is like 2 or 2.1. So you just want to make sure that you're looking at, we're talking like Questlab, LabCorp, vitamin D standards, okay? You probably need about 2 months to 3 months off of no vitamin D to bring it down. Some people go faster, some go slower. That's why testing and not guessing is ideal. Do we need to worry about depleting other nutrients while supplementing D3? I mean, it depends. Vitamin D is fat soluble, right? So I mentioned if you're doing good high quality vitamin A and good high quality vitamin K, you're probably fine if your diet's good. If your diet's crappy, you probably want to throw in some K2 and some cod liver oil just to be safe. Excellent. All right, boyfriend has respiratory problems, and I give him 20K. I use a vitamin D. His secretory IgA is super low, and cortisol is super low. Anything else going to get him fend off the virus or colds? So vitamin D is going to be excellent. 30 to 50 milligrams of zinc. A ionized zinc is going to be excellent as well. You can always do vitamin C up to tolerance. And any respiratory issues, NAC or glutathione will be great as well. Good job. Hi, doctor. You mentioned that in the past you suffer from Hashimoto's. Could you give a brief of what caused the condition, like gluten, dairy, stress, lack of sleep, alcohol? Okay. So yeah, with my Hashimoto's, my antibodies never went too high, and my hormones were able to stay pretty good. So in general, with my Hashimoto's, antibodies were between 50 to 100. I'm able to keep them down below 50 and under control if I keep out grains. I typically do pretty good with ghee and butter. I'll do a little bit of nuts like 10-20% of the time, not a staple. And I have just good protein, good fats at every single meal, and it works excellent for me and I'm able to keep things down. I do glutathione and NAC and vitamin D, which are very helpful. Really good good vitamin C, zinc, etc. Oh yeah, Adolfo, thank you. That app is D-Minder. Yeah. D-Dimer is actually a test for clotting factors in the blood. They use that for like Coumadin and blood thinners. Yep, that's the app, D-Minder. Okay, cool. Doing regular jiu-jitsu and got some legit joint pain and inflammation in finger joints. What do you suggest? Well, so it depends, right? Is it just because you're grappling so much and holding so much? If that's the case, is it an acute thing? Is the stress acute where you just started doing this level of intensity in grappling, or is it longer term and it's kind of causing a problem? So the first thing is, if you're doing like really intense workouts and it's just too much, pulling back on the workout intensity or giving more breaks between. One, adding in more collagen and more bone broth. So if you're doing a lot of joint stress, getting more collagen in 20 to 40 grams a day, maybe upping the fish oil could be great. You could always just get a really good, one of the new portable percussors that you can get on Amazon, and just kind of really just percuss those joints all the way up from the pips and the dips and the metacarpal phalangeal joints all the way down into the carpals and into the forearm, and you can just really work that whole area with a good massager. And then outside of that, like finding a good chiropractor or myofascial person to do some myofascial release or ART, or of course any of the ARP wave or newbie treatments to help kind of lessen inflammation bioelectrically is great. What's your thoughts on dealing with Gilbert syndrome? So Gilbert syndrome is a condition where there's elevated amounts of bilirubin. I would just make sure liver and gallbladder are functioning really well. Make sure there's no other issues going on that are kind of ruled out by a medical doctor. And then outside of that, do all the core foundational functional medicine things, right? Diet, digestion, good detoxification, good hormones, all those good things. What do you recommend for balancing hormones? Oh, that's a loaded question. So I would refer you to justinhealth.com. Use that little search bar there and just type in hormone balance, and you'll get articles and videos on that topic that will just do a lot more justice than I can do in a 10-second blip. If you have candida overgrowth inside, can it be transferred outside to your skin? Yes, it definitely can. Definitely can. I mean, I've seen it with couples, for instance. Intercourse, you can see it transfer from one person to the other. It's definitely possible. Usually if you have tinea or versicolor on the outside of the skin, most dermatologists say it won't spread, but I've seen things to refute that. Oh, and then go back to my question about my Hashimoto's. I did have a lot of candida issues. I did have a lot of H. pylori and some blasto infections. So I think those infections definitely held me back, and getting those addressed helped absorb my nutrition better, help with my immune system. Obviously, supporting all the nutritional deficiencies that I had made a big difference. Any recommendations for post-surgical intestinal jejunum resection and anastomosis and recovery and healing? Yeah, I would probably start off with a really good high-quality elemental diet, bone broth. I would start there. Get to the underlying issue. Why did it happen? There's probably some kind of irritable bowel disease lingering in the background. Get that addressed. Autoimmune diet, probably other underlying infections, dysbiosis, low levels of good bacteria. So all those things have to be looked at and addressed as well. But a really good high quality elemental diet is great. I have one on my website that I use. True Keto Collagen is a great one that I use that's very good elemental. All the nutrients are there, good fats too, very helpful. Hey, thanks, Joseph. Really appreciate that. Why does vitamin D make me have heart palpitations? It could be because it's increasing absorption of calcium, and there may be some mineral imbalances. So if that's happening, I'd probably make sure magnesium, potassium, and also sodium and chloride are supported at the same time, and go slow on that vitamin D dosing. Titrate up slower. That should fix the problem. And then you could take to detoxify radiation out of your body. Well, I mean, it depends. Like, cesium 123 tends to hit that iodine area, so you can do some iodine to help flush some of that out. I mean, of course, the easiest thing is, I would say out of the gates, glutathione, and good infrared sauna could be helpful, but all the other good foundational things. How can you tell if you are hypo or hyperthyroid with tests? I mean, the first thing is TSH high or low. It's inverse, right? TSH high tends to mean hypo. TSH low tends to mean hyper. Now, that's an assumption. You want to look at the level. So if T4 or T3 is on the higher or lower side, that's a sign that you're moving in that direction. A lot of people have TSH that's off, but their hormones downstream could be fine or even low. So you got to look at the whole thing. Of course, high levels of vitamin D, high levels of vitamin, check that, high levels of T3, hyper, low levels of T3, hypo. And then you obviously can see if the conversion of T4 is also the same. Because you could have good T4 and you'd be like, okay, that's fine, but then your T3 is low and you could be functionally hypo. So you got to look at T4 and T3. Any idea when I take T3, I get scratchy, feel a bit down, and have neck pain? I'm not sure. Make sure the vitamin D3 is good. What do you think about the cause of management of high B12 and folate levels? I mean, it depends. If you're just doing like a blood test to look at folate serum or B12 serum, not a good marker. So you'd want to actually look at methylmalonic acid or 4-aminoglutamate or FIGLU for short to get a good idea where you're at functionally. And just make sure the vitamin B12 or folate is methylated or activated, right? Methylated B12 or calcium folate or LMTHFR, L-methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase folate, that's all activated. Hey, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Do you suggest taking a multi-B complex first thing when you wake up with breakfast? I mean, I take my multi-pack that has a really good B in there. I only recommend extra Bs if we see certain testing, really a lot of increased need for folate or B6 or B complex, then I'll recommend extra on top of that. So if your diet's great, lots of good meat, good digestion, there may be enough B vitamins with that and a good multi. And then some may need more on top of that because of stress and everything else. So you got to look at the whole picture there. Excellent. All right, very good question here. Father, 73 years old, was diagnosed with atherosclerosis of the aorta, so narrowing of the vasculature. What can he do about it? Other tests to get to the root cause? Can it be reversed naturally or only with meds? So, I mean, typically something like that, they're probably going to do blood thinners. They're probably going to do decrease in blood pressure medications. I would typically recommend decreasing inflammation as much as possible. So whatever the root cause of inflammation, good. Check homocysteine, check CRP, check fibrinogen. Look at all those different markers. Make sure those are good. So lower carb, paleo, get insulin down, good B vitamins. You may want to look at doing systemic enzymes to help decrease the atherosclerosis, the narrowing of the artery. You may want to look at finding someone that can do some chelation to decrease that blockage and clogging. So all of those are going to be very important, but you really want to work with someone on this to help get you better. I've been receiving network spinal analysis from a chiropractor, and I've been receiving countless benefits. Have you heard of that protocol? Yeah, I've done network. For me, it never was like super great for me because I'm more of like an osseous guy. I really like my hips adjusted or my hand or my back adjusted, but some people do really well with it. You know, there's usually a technique that's going to be best for every single kind of person, right? And so if it works for you, that's great. I've seen people and friends that do that technique and with great success, so that's great. All right, good thing. What causes picolinate on organic acids to be really low? Is it related to zinc levels? So low picolinate typically correlates with low free-form amino acids. Okay. Is some diarrhea normal on day 2 after a 5-day fast, having green juice and bone broth? It's possible. If it's just happening after a long fast, it's possible you have to ease in to eating again. I typically, if I do a fast for a day or two, ease in with like some gentle foods, maybe a soup, maybe a stew, something that's easier to digest and handle. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's quick chat. If you did, thumbs up, comments below. You want to reach out, click down below for links to get access to moi. You guys have an awesome day. Take care, y'all. Bye.